Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building the Housing Counseling Workforce. My name is Sid Alvarado with ICF, the technical assistance provider to HUD's Office of Housing Counseling. I will be one of your moderators for this session. We know that many of you are experts in Zoom at this point. However, we always want to go over how we're going to be using the chat box as well as the Q&A box for our sessions. So the chat box is where you will submit any technical issues, and the Q&A box is where you're going to submit any content related questions. We're going to take some time at the end of the presentation to answer questions that you may have. If you want to know where you can get materials, the PowerPoint has been posted for this session, and then we've also just included it in the chat box. You can gather that information by using that link there. Webinar materials are posted on the HUD Exchange in the webinar archive and will be available 7 to 14 days after the live webinar. You can find it by date or by topic. For those of you who are interested in receiving a certificate of attendance, attendance will be marked following this live session. Once attendance is marked, you can print a certificate by logging onto your account and going to your learning transcript. You would select the course name and then click print certificate when the information is available or when the attendance is available. So what are we going to be talking about today? We know that building the housing counseling workforce has been a topic of mind for so many agencies. And so during this session, we will be talking about how 3 different intermediaries have taken an innovative approach on building the housing counseling workforce for not only those who are in their network, but also for the industry and the network overall. With us today, we have Housing Action Illinois, and we also have some important resources that are from the National Housing Resource Center. We also have Rural Community Assistance Corporation, who many of us know as RCAC. And then we also have National Community Reinvestment Coalition, who many of us know as NCRC. They will touch on topics such as programming that focuses on helping various groups consider a housing counseling career path. We're also going to talk about strategies that have been instrumental in helping the housing counselors who serve rural communities. And we're also going to talk about how working with universities is helping to shape the next generation of renters, homeowners, as well as the next generation of housing counselors. We will have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of the presentation. However, we do invite you to send your questions in while they are top of mind so that we will have them ready to go. And as always, we always like to leave you with resources. So at the end of the presentation, we're going to have some links for you to connect with some additional resources. Now I'd like to introduce those who will be speaking to you today. As I said, my name is Sid Alvarado. I will only be one of your moderators. I'll be joined by Stephanie Williams, the Deputy Director with the Office of Outreach and Capacity Building with HUD's Office of Housing Counseling. She'll be also helping out during Q&A. We have David Young, the Director of Capacity Building with Housing Action Illinois. We have Debbie Baranchuk, Program Coordinator, as well as Donnelly Brooks, Rural Development Specialist with Rural Community Assistance Corporation, RCAC. And then we have Ibijoke Akinbowale, who is the Director of Community Impact at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. And now that I've given reason for you to be excited about what you're going to be hearing today in this session, I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker, David Young.
Thank you, Sid, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are enjoying this first day of the conference. We've gotten some really important information. I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about some of the things that Housing Action Illinois is doing in order to expand the pipeline of certified counselors for our industry. Housing Action Illinois is an intermediary, and we serve 35 subgrantees in the Midwest. We're also a HUD-approved trainer. In 2018, we developed an online study group to help existing counselors prepare for the certification exam. And now that certification is mandatory, it went in place, of course, a year ago, we knew that agencies would need assistance finding certified counselors. We also knew that persons interested in becoming a counselor didn't necessarily have a clear path for how to enter our profession. With these things in mind, we developed what we call the career path training, which provides a clear route for people interested in becoming a counselor and prepares them for the certification exam. Wanda Collins, who many of you might remember from the online study group, developed and teaches the career path training for us. The career path training focuses on helping people pass the exam so that they then can be hired by an approved agency. And once hired by an agency, they will need additional training. So again, I just want to emphasize that this training is designed to help people pass the certification exam, because we understand that it's much easier for a housing counseling agency to be able to hire someone who's already passed the certification exam, and then they can give them further training to help them become a fully fledged housing counselor. We launched our career path in January of 2022, and we also recently had a cohort the last week of April, the first week in May. Next slide, please. And we've had approximately 60 students that have attended our first two cohorts. Through the career path, we're looking to target three distinct groups: college students, retirees that are considering a second or maybe even a third career, and also former clients. With college students, we are specifically looking to attract individuals from historically Black colleges and universities, as well as other minority serving institutions. We know that it's very important for our consumers that use our services to interact with counselors that look like them and have their shared experiences. So it's very important for us to be able to attract those individuals to consider our profession. And we also know that with retirees, many retirees are looking for an opportunity where they can give back to their communities. And so serving as a housing counselor is an ideal way to do that. And with former clients who have experienced the benefits of housing counseling, they are often some of our best advocates and ambassadors and make great housing counselors. So we're really looking to attract those individuals. We have two upcoming trainings. We have a training in September, that's English language. And we've also translated our class into Spanish, and we'll offer that first cohort in November. So again, that really ties into making sure that we have people that can meet our consumers where they are and where they need to be. Next slide, please. The career path training works in conjunction with the Housing Counselor Jobs Board, which was developed by the National Housing Resource Center. Counselors looking for a position can upload their resume, and agencies looking for to fill a position can upload a job posting. The Jobs Board has been live since late last year and has been used by a number of not only housing counselors, but also housing counseling organizations that are advertising their positions. And we hope that as more people can take the career path training, there will be more prospective counselors that will be uploading their resume to the Jobs Board. So once someone passes the exam, they can use the Jobs Board to upload their resume and also search available positions. So it's a great way to see what's happening, to put in your jobs, your resume, and then also for housing counseling organizations to find out who's available to fill their positions. So I look forward to being able to answer any questions that the audience has later in the presentation. And now I will turn it over to Debbie and Donnelly at RCAC.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you, David. RCAC is located in West Sacramento, California, and our subgrantees do deal a lot with rural communities, but our training covers the entire country. So we've sort of seen both sides of the issues that are going on out there as far as housing counseling. Next slide, please. So what we have found is there's a higher demand for specific training. So there are people that are coming in wanting specifically HECM classes or credit classes or foreclosure classes. And we think this is great because it's wonderful to have a subject matter expert in your office that keeps up on all the changes, which we know happen on a regular basis in what we do. And then we have found that seasoned counselors need to improve their skills. So they are coming back and taking our classes just as review, and especially with all the COVID issues that are out there and all the opportunities that are available through some of those dollars that are out there for us. And then we have found online easier access for rural agencies and nationwide training opportunities. So if you're in a rural area, it's very hard sometimes, number one, to have the money to go to a live class somewhere or afford some more expensive classes. So we've tried to keep our classes at either no cost or low cost to give opportunities for everybody to be able to take those courses. And that has turned out to be a great opportunity for people that are in rural areas as well. And next slide. So the other thing that we have found is that there's a lot of newly hired counselors that have no experience and they need to take and pass the HUD exam as quickly as possible. Or they could even lose their employment if they don't pass it in a certain time frame. So one of our thoughts is to offer a pre-HUD core competencies class, which is our training for the HUD course test, to help them understand the math, the acronyms that we use every day, all the things that they're not familiar with, because it may have come from a completely different line of work and all of a sudden they're in housing counseling. And it'll make it a lot easier for them to go through the regular training when they have an understanding ahead of time of what's available out there and how all of it works. It can be really confusing if you've never been in the industry before. And I get emails just about every week from managers trying to get new hires registered for classes before they even start employment for core competencies and boot camp things that we offer as training for the HUD counseling exam. So we want to provide as many tools early on for these people as possible so that they can get studying as soon as possible to be able to get registered to take that test. So it's a tough time when you've got people coming in that don't know a whole lot about housing counseling and others that are leaving the field. So most of them that are coming in are new to the field. They're overwhelmed. They're scared about the exam. They're worried about passing it because they've got a time frame usually ahead of them to get to be able to take the exam. So we want to provide training. So we've expanded our training time from 2 to 3 hours for each of the 7 courses that we offer for core competencies to allow us time to work through all the math problems and all the other questions that come up from the new people to help them gain confidence to pass the exam. And we found that has been really critical, and we take up just about the full 3 hours per class because there are so many questions. And then we want to be able to work with people ahead of time to make sure they've got no connectivity issues, no technical difficulties prior to class, so they can have a successful experience, especially in rural areas. Sometimes the bandwidth is not there for them to be able to connect to go to training or Zoom It just makes it really difficult. So we want to make sure we offer as much technical assistance as we can to get these people going and get them on the right path. And with that, I'll turn it over to Donna Lee.
Thank you, Debbie. So RCAC is a HUD Housing Counseling Intermediary with a group of 16 sub-grantees currently. And as Deb said, we're also a HUD training partner. So we're really lucky that we get to work with both sides and have both of those tools available to us. But working with our agencies that primarily serve rural communities, their training plans to bring a new hire up to being able to take and pass the HUD certification exam is typically not as robust as we would see with a larger agency. So we provide them with training, technical assistance, and support to help them increase their training plan, and also to be able to provide that technical assistance to develop a good training plan so their new hires have that support as they come in and are working towards that HUD certification if they aren't already certified. And then one of the other issues is the lack of certified counselors with experience already on staff to mentor those new hires. As David said earlier, even certification's not the end of what a certified counselor needs. It's really learning what's going on in the industry and what issues are in the community that you're serving. So having that person on staff with experience that can assist someone to work through the workflow process and how that agency does business and what programs they're administering and what other resources are in the community are really important. So some of the strategies we've worked with our sub-grantees with is helping them to bring previous employees back in on a contract basis has been one option. And also with our CAC, providing them with technical assistance and support to help build their capacity to be able to mentor and do internal training for their new hires. And then difficulty in hiring someone that's already certified, especially in the smaller rural areas that our communities serve. There can be gaps in services that happen for agencies that don't have the capacity for enough certified counselors for all of the types of services they have on their work plan. So some of the strategies we've done in working with these agencies is making sure that they're working with newly hired staff, giving a really solid training plan for folks as they become certified, and as we're doing mentoring and internal training, that staff is doing internal training to get not just certified, but also be able to come up to kind of industry standards for housing counseling. So obtaining that certification within 3, 6, or 9 months, or whatever the training plan says for that agency. And then in addition to that, helping them implement either a buddy system within their agency if they have that capacity, or looking outside into their local community for other agencies that may have staff in that same position, or some of our other sub-grantees may also have been helpful in mentoring and working on a buddy system to be able to pass that certification exam. Next slide, please. And then one of the bigger, more critical issues we're seeing currently is staff retention. So we've seen a lot of staffing turnovers, especially in smaller agencies. It can be very critical for existing counselors when they're unable to become certified or having difficulties in taking and passing that exam. So, and also staff retiring, having gaps of knowledge in that agency when people have left the agency has been a big issue, not just for some of the rural agencies, but some of the medium or larger agencies that serve urban areas also. But some of the strategies we have is to help them with transition planning, to make sure that they're aware of the retirees that are on the radar to be exiting their positions, how to build capacity, and of course, technical assistance and training, encouraging those retirees or folks that are planning on retiring to stay on longer to help that whole transition plan to be fruitful for that new staff. And then as an intermediary serving those smaller rural communities, we do often see staff struggling in performing multiple roles at the same time. I think we all do that, right? It's in line with that nonprofit kind of industry in general, but using volunteers that can come in from other local venues, local agencies that can help do some of those tasks that don't require a certified counselor can be helpful. But one of the bigger strategies that we found for our network is we've developed an ongoing technical assistance and training where we check in bi-monthly with each one of our sub-grantees to find out what issues they're currently experiencing and what kind of technical assistance training, capacity building, additional resources that we can help them with to help them increase their capacity, provide high quality counseling services, and of course, remain compliant with HUD's regulations. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to E.B. Joke with NCRC.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ibi Joke Kimbawale, and I'm the Director of Community Impact at NCRC. NCRC is a national membership-based organization here in Washington, D.C. Our organization focuses on creating a just economy through wealth-building strategies on entrepreneurship, housing, and policy issues. Our organization also has the fantastic opportunity of being a HUD-approved intermediary program. In 2021, NCRC received feedback from its stakeholder partners, congratulating us for our significant BIPOC engagement. We decided to take that initiative up a notch. And fortunately, we were able to receive funding for the FY21 HUD Comprehensive Housing Counseling Grant for an HBCU partner initiative. This initiative allowed us to launch a partnership with America's oldest treasure, the first HBCU, Cheyney University of Pennsylvania. I'm proud to say that's my alma mater. Next slide, please. This initiative will focus on 3 areas: marketing, education, and career path. Next slide. Initially, we were very interested in providing pre-purchase education to students. We met with over 30 students at the university in May, and they had a lot of interest in becoming homeowners and broadening their experience in real estate. And so we wanted to make certain that training on standard pre-purchase education was absolutely a mandatory factor in this program and offering. But we also wanted to take into account the pandemic that we're currently experiencing and the very needed support in order to truly transition into recovery for many Americans. And so the curriculum that our affiliate network has been developing for this program has included pre-purchase education, foreclosure, and rental topics, specifically to provide education for the neighboring campus community on the protections of the CARES Act and the Homeowner Assistance Fund. Student ambassadors and staff advisors receive education and coaching on all 3 topics. Next slide, please. As a result of participating in the group education from our affiliate network, students will work with our housing counseling partners to develop key marketing strategies to attract a younger demographic. And so a lot of times students are working to develop sample tweets or other social media components that may be attractive and that our local affiliates don't necessarily have dedicated staff to devote the capacity to it. And so our hope is that by having the students receive firsthand experience in the coaching and counseling associated with the program is that they'll be able to communicate in ways that traditional counseling groups cannot. And so students are charged with the task of developing campaigns around the education and coaching that they've received. Next slide. All right. And one of the biggest takeaways for us is, of course, the career path. We're very interested in supporting the next generation of housing counselors and what that looks like and how they can continue to advocate for our field. NCRC does have the fine distinction of being a HUD training partner, and our National Training Academy provides training support for the certification exam. Students that are interested in pursuing the certification get the opportunity to opt into the training element of our program, going through the certification training process with our training partner, and also NCRC does pay for the cost of taking and completing the certification exam. This is a new area for us that we have taken full advantage of deepening our relationship with these BIPOC institutions, where the students are excited and are looking at this as an opportunity to advocate for their communities. And it really is generating significant interest in our career path. The goal here is, of course, to highlight the role as housing counselors, but also to demonstrate a capacity for students to advance in their careers throughout the housing counseling communities. Also by providing opportunities for one-on-one support and engagement with housing counselors, with the leadership of local housing counseling organizations, and also with fellow partners at intermediary programs and our stakeholder engagement through federal and private resources. We're really excited and looking forward to being able to welcome new housing counselors into the field by providing this level of support and coaching to the students directly, to the staff at the university, and to the neighboring campus community. I'd like to turn it over to you, Sid.
Thank you so much, Ibijoke. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful information that you have provided. And now what I would like to do is I'd like to invite Stephanie. We're going to begin with a few questions I'll ask, and then I'm going to invite Stephanie to let me know what we have in the Q&A box. So if you haven't already, definitely take time to post your question in the Q&A box. And as time allows, we'll go ahead and we will get to it. My first question is for David. David, I'd like to ask, what advice do you have for agencies who are interested in creating an outreach strategy to attract those who may be a good fit for the housing counseling profession?
So I really think that housing counseling agencies should focus on outreach to individuals who have received their services previously. I mentioned during my presentation that some of the best housing counselors we have are folks that have used our services previously. So there is, for a housing counseling agency, a captive audience that they can conduct specific outreach to if they go back and look to see who graduated from their programs, who completed their programs, and do their outreach directly to those individuals, and can talk about not only the benefits to the community that they serve, but also talk about other opportunities that are available in the financial services sector that becoming a housing counselor could open up. So again, I would say that for a local housing counseling agency, focusing on the audience that they already have, individuals that have gone through their program previously, would be a great start to building an outreach campaign.
Okay, thank you so much, David. And I echo some of those sentiments. I'm pretty sure that there are some agencies that really didn't think about targeting the groups that you listed, those three particular and distinct groups. So thank you so much for that information. My next question is for Debbie or Donnelly. What approach can housing counseling agencies who are serving rural communities take to build up their workforce?
Your thoughts, Deb?
Well, I think, number one is stating how underserved some of the areas are and what a difference they can make to their community by partaking in a job with a housing counseling agency, there's just so much opportunity there for people that don't have as easy access as others, et cetera. I think there's just a lot to be said for serving an area that doesn't have a whole lot available, and opening up those doors for people. And you've got to have people in place to be able to open those doors. So I think it's a great opportunity for someone to take advantage of that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a great industry. And I would just, the only thing I would add to that is having a solid training plan, having a plan as you're bringing folks in on how you're going to get them from here to there. Being certified is not the end all. We need to train them in how we do business. What are the new COVID workouts, and these programs and different resources available in communities change. I see you be joking, rolling her eyes. I mean, they change on a daily basis sometimes. So keeping up with the industry and knowing what's going on is kind of a lifelong effort for us.
Yes, most definitely. I can definitely agree with that. We are in a very in a changing industry. And I do agree that it's really important for housing counselors to really stay abreast of all the changes that are consistently and constantly going on. So thank you so much for that, Debbie and Donnelly.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry. I'd like to jump in with one of the questions from the chat.
sure.
And I can pose this to any of you who would like to answer. To paraphrase the question, it's asking what outreach you do to members of the housing counseling field to learn about this as a career opportunity. And specifically, the question is targeting the AAPI community, the Asian American Pacific Islanders community, saying that there seems to be very low awareness of this field in that community, and that there's a need to increase counselors representing that community group. So if any of you could address that, that would be great.
I'll go ahead and start if you don't mind. It's a really question, but it actually builds on the fact that there are a lot of communities, not just the AAPI community, that are unaware of housing counseling and housing counseling as a profession and what the benefits are. So we have to do outreach to all of these different audiences. And that's why in my previous answer, I mentioned that it's so important for counseling organizations to look at past consumers as a target of outreach to consider housing counseling, especially organizations that are serving an AAPI or other minority communities. You often have access to those folks that larger audiences might not have. And so you have the ability of reaching out to those folks and doing the outreach and explaining someone that was a housing counselor helped you, you could go on to help many other people achieve their housing dreams. I think that Brian Kim mentioned in an earlier session how important it is to have those examples. So if we can have local housing counseling agencies that are serving those populations, continue to do outreach to those populations and say, you know, you have received that benefit. Now you can help provide that benefit to other people. That will also help us to build this pipeline of prospective home counselors, excuse me.
And if I could just piggyback after that, David, thank you so much. RCAC is really lucky in the communities that we work, not just those rural communities, but we work with Indigenous and Native populations also in the Pacific and on the West Coast. So there are very, very specific needs in those communities. And the needs are really critical for housing counseling and support. So the outreach and marketing that we've been doing in technical assistance and partnering with these agencies has really blossomed and developed some wonderful relationships and assistance for their local communities.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch that. And I would just suggest too, if there's job fairs, community events, anywhere where you can have a booth or a table with your information on it, just to spread the word about what you do and what the opportunities are, can be really powerful too.
Thank you. I have a question for Ibijoke. Are there some things agencies should keep in mind when thinking about partnering with universities?
Absolutely. I would say that we shouldn't be remiss in taking into consideration that these universities are dealing with students and they too are responding to a pandemic. And so oftentimes in our respective workplaces, we find ourselves accommodating and adjusting to a hybrid model, or, finding a way to be compliant with the state laws and legislations as they change. And so these university partners are dealing with students, they're dealing with parents. It is a very sensitive time, and they need resources. I think the resources that we can provide in the form of counseling education and a career path for the students, it's absolutely important and it's valuable to the university and their constituents, but we should also be mindful that they too have certain issues that they need to be very responsive to as it pertains to responding to the pandemic actively. And so in my conversation with university partners, that's something that's been a highlight, and how to keep students engaged, how to keep students safe, how to provide and resume interactive in-person programming as they still navigate mitigating changes in their campus communities.
Wow, that's something to really think about, how there may be a unique response because of the fact that they are a university and students and other things that come into play. Thank you for that.
Here's a question that I think might be of interest. It's a little bit of a different category, but the question is, how do you convince the executive team of your agency to expand the housing counseling staff? Any insights on that?
Sure, I'll chime in. I would say demonstrating a need for it within the community. I think anytime that you can help your leadership team figure out a few things, how to pay for the counseling that is required, what the community needs are, what the partners are in the community, but then also back to that first point about how to pay for it, what is the true cost of counseling for your agency? We make a lot of assumptions at the national level, and a lot of our stakeholders that help support this field make a lot of assumptions about what the costs are, but they obviously vary between the markets and at your individual agency. And so supporting your leadership and figuring out a number of those questions certainly could be really helpful in growing your counseling team. It's all about demand, the capacity, of course, but there has to be some internal logic for the agency to justify the need.
Thank you for that, Ibijoke. Anyone else?
I was on the board of a housing counseling agency, and our executive director would come to us with requests from the staff and her, but basically detailing what was going on and why we needed to do what we needed to do. And everybody was a lot more responsive when they understood what needed to happen, and we would find a way in the budget to make it work. And it was just really helpful to know that everybody was on board from the team, that, you know what, to make this work better and flow better, here's what we need to do.
Something to think about. Thank you, Debbie. Any other perspectives?
I would just add that while it's not all of the data we would like, the 9902 does provide good data in order to build your case. So if you are seeing increases in your housing counseling activity over a couple of years, you can use the data from your 9902 to share with management to show how your program is increasing or it's expanding the number of people that it's serving and why it is justified to request additional staffing.
Thank you. Great perspectives.
Well, what kind of goes hand in hand with that, and it's a number of questions that are appearing in the QA box along the lines of funding. Where do you find funding to pay for housing, your housing counseling staff? That's the $1 million question. No pun intended, referring to money, but certification is a requirement that all of the counselors have met by now. And of course, there are people who are saying that the certification requirement is not commensurate with the salaries that are paid to housing counseling staff. I mean, we could have a week-long discussion on how to fund your housing counselors, but if you could talk a little bit to what funding sources people might look to, without giving away your secrets and your own secret stash of monies, but just to give people a sense of how they can not only build their staffs, but pay for their staffs.
Well, Stephanie, I'm not going to talk about an immediate thing because I know that's the $1 million question, as you said, but I do want to take just a moment to talk about what the industry is looking to do. We understand that salaries are currently not commensurate with the experience. And we understand that a lot of people are wondering, well, why did I have to get certified if I'm not making any additional resources? But the reason that we needed to move forward with certification is so that we as an industry are in a better position to advocate for more financial resources so that we can pay you better. We are working on fee-for-service proposals that will help to bring more revenue to the housing counseling space. And with that revenue, we will then be in a better position to provide more competitive salaries to housing counseling organizations and housing counselors, housing counseling staff. And as Ibejoke said just a moment ago, it is important to use the data that you have when you are talking to potential funders, whether it is a bank or whether it is a philanthropic institution, and to show what your true cost of counseling is. So an immediate thing that you can do when you're talking to one of those entities is really show what your costs are and use the 9902 to show the services that you are providing and how those services may be expanding. But also keep in mind that as an industry, we are all working to secure more resources, whether it's fee for service or other dollars, so that you are in a position to provide salaries commensurate to the experience that the housing counseling community brings to the table.
I want to thank you, David, for mentioning fee for service. I had this conversation with an affiliate the other day, and we were talking about how some industry partners have the set cost of a fee for service at $300. And I think we all know that $300 is not enough to work a client for 6 to 12 months and help move them into home ownership. But what we do not have the collective answer for is how much it costs your agency to do that work. And so leveraging your resources is absolutely very critical, making these local partnerships within your state, because they are often the most responsive partners to what's happening in your community. While nationally, we see the statistics of the 9902, and we know that pre-purchase by and large is of significant interest for consumers that are trying to connect with housing counseling agencies. You might be in a unique market where foreclosure is actually, the more hot ticketed service requests. And so that's not something that your partners at a national scale can truly account for, but your local partners are on the field and in the ground with you and can be a bit more responsive to those needs. Also taking the opportunity to utilize the data, as David mentioned, and propose innovative solutions and counseling programs to addressing your community needs. Counseling doesn't have to be the standard run of the mill. You can take a look at the curriculum that you're providing. Are you doing post-purchase education? There are a number of offerings that you can make at the organizational level that is attractive to key funders within your local community and nationally throughout the stakeholder ecosystem. And so that would be a recommendation of mine.
Thank you, Bijoke. Any other comments? No. I see a question, and it's asking, how do you sell the industry of housing counseling to invite those that may be interesting? What is it that you would say or do, or things that you would think about that would make it attractive? And that's open to anyone.
I would start with success stories of clients, whether it's credit or homeownership or avoiding foreclosure, whatever it is. I would use those success stories to build on what's needed in the industry and to make it so known as to what the effect you can have on families or individuals with the actions that you take on their behalf.
Thank you, Debbie. David or Bijoke, you want to add anything? Okay.
I would just add, Sid, that we've talked a little bit about compensation, but there are other things that are available in our industry that some of us really, really like. There is flexibility. There's vacation time. We might have, for example, maybe there's a young parent with children, or someone who is working and also trying to take care of a parent or a grandparent. And we've had flexibility within our industry for a long time to make that possible for people. So in addition to telling the success stories, which are very important, I would also highlight the flexibility that is offered in this space and the ability to have a work-life balance, which in some other careers is not as possible.
That's a great point. Thank you, David.
I mean, I think I'd also just chime in and say, I don't know anyone that works in nonprofit organizations that does this work if not for the love of it. And so to some of the earlier points about connecting returned clients to the workforce, I mean, that client aspect really is truly remarkable. And the hard work that this entire counseling community does to help folks save homes, move into home ownership when they don't think it's possible, avoid eviction and foreclosure. I mean, there is obviously a heartwarming element that you don't get in other career fields. And so I think it's really important to be mindful of just how integral housing counseling services are to the community and the part that we all play in that. And so that would be my elevator pitch about why housing counseling is so great.
Thank you.
I think once you get bit by that housing bug, there's really nothing you can do, right? That's right.
Stephanie,
Well,
were you?
Yeah, I feel like I would be completely remiss if I, during this session, didn't ask y'all, what else can the Office of Housing Counseling do? What else can we do by way of training, of materials that we can publish or make available on the website? I think whenever we've seen a need or have been asked to provide training or a toolkit or a listening session or whatever it is, I think this particular session and this conference speaks to the need for more conversations about the housing counseling workforce. But what else is there that OHC might be able to consider and provide in the way of assistance here?
Stephanie, it might seem like a small.
Don't beat us up, David. Let's just that's the.
Wow. You didn't even let me ask. I was actually going to say, it's a very small thing, but earlier I saw the introduction of the signature that housing counselors can use, that certified counselors can use going forward. And I was just going to say kudos to the Office of Housing Counseling for making that available, because I think that one of the things that's really important for our industry, especially now that individuals have passed the certification exam, is that we need to praise the hell out of them. And we need to make sure how much they are valued and how much we appreciate their skill sets. And while money is important, I also think that people really want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be appreciated. So the more that we are able to do that, and we are able to hold them up and show to the world how important they are, I think that that's going to go a long way to helping with job satisfaction. So I actually, Stephanie, was not going to criticize OHC, at least not with that answer.
It was said with such passion, David. Anyone else?
I would just take this opportunity to commend the OHC team for being such fantastic partners and really helping us to propel the field forward with such business-minded solutions. I will share some recent feedback that I heard from one of our affiliates, and that was learning more about agency profiles and how they compare to each other. I learned a lot from our affiliates in terms of ones that spend significant time with clients, and as opposed to some other counseling programs that are a little more standard 20-minute engagement with clients, lacking on the follow-up. And so I know there was some counselor frustration around the funding that these long-term engagement client-based organizations spend versus the folks that are sort of more of a pipeline approach. And so the counseling community has asked for some feedback in terms of how the agencies are comparing with their peers so that they can make the necessary modifications to their programs and adjust to the standard that we're moving towards.
Thank you, Bijoke. Debbie or Donna, anything to add on Stephanie's question? Seems like a great opportunity.
I guess I would have to start with consistent funding and not having gaps in funding from the Office of Housing Counseling would be very helpful, especially in the rural communities that we serve. It can be really difficult for smaller agencies to bridge those gaps. The additional funding sources they have typically are just a layer that works in addition to our housing counseling funding. So it can just be really difficult when we have gaps in funding.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for your honesty. Were there any other questions that you had, Stephanie, that you saw? We might have room for one more.
Before Stephanie does that, Sid, I noticed that there was one Q&A from Vincent in Louisiana. Vincent, reach out to Housing Action Illinois. We'll be happy to help you with your specific question.
Thank you so much, David. And there was mention from, I believe it was you, Debbie or Donna, about transition planning that you provide within your network. And so I think, having that transition planning is really important. And I'd like to mention that we have a session coming up on Thursday titled Championing the Resilience of Housing Counseling Agencies. And during that session, we're going to really speak in depth about succession planning, which goes hand in hand with that transition. Also kind of furthers the conversation that we're having on today. So just wanted to put that out there for those who are just interested in, transition planning and succession planning, which is really important, even in the retention when it comes to agencies, and just invite you to that session that's going to be happening on Thursday, okay? Was there anything else? Okay, so resources. We always like to make sure that you have some resources. I know many of you had some questions, and you might have questions that are specific to the organization. So we provided the link here. We did provide the link to access the materials. So when you access those materials, you'll have this information at your disposal where you could go to these links and learn more about these great organizations that spoke before us on today. HUVA is a great opportunity to continue the conversation that we were just having. Stephanie with the Office of Housing Counseling asked a great question. So if you had some input, if it was something that you would like to say that you didn't have an opportunity to say during this session, we invite you to engage with us on HUVA to answer those questions. And we also invite our speakers as well to continue the conversation over HUVA, so that you can get some of those questions answered that may be directed at your organization. And before we go, we do have an end of day Mentimeter question that we would like to ask you. And so we have provided that information in the chat box. So please make sure that you go to Mentimeter, use the information that we provided to answer that end of day question that we had. And we always like to stay connected and like to let you know how to stay connected with us. We have an event webpage there, and you can also find us on HUD Exchange, as well as some great material, tools, and guidelines that may be helpful to your organization. And if you would like to engage with us directly, you can email us at housing.counseling@hud.gov. And although this is the last session for today, we definitely invite you to day 2. We have a wonderful lineup that is waiting for you on tomorrow. So we're going to be starting promptly at 12, where we will have the Office of Housing Counseling, day 2 welcome. And then we will have some concurrent sessions where you'll have the opportunity to talk and engage with specific offices. And then from 2 to 3, we're going to be talking about culturally sensitive and linguistically appropriate housing counseling agencies. And then we will end the day with 2 concurrent sessions, making a difference through partnership with MSIs, as well as housing counseling and the disaster recovery process. We thank you so much for taking time to not only attend this session, but also attending prior sessions. And we look forward to continually engaging with you on tomorrow into Thursday. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you to our speakers, as well as our ASL interpreter. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.